sua aceitação. Mas o samba brasileiro já nasce no coração, já nasce no coração. Tu que una vez me quisiste y a mí me dijiste te quiero a ti.
Let's now turn to the correspondence series. This is the one that is going to be favored by those philosophers that have more realist inclinations, and it is often associated with Aristotle when he says in the Metaphysics that to say what is that it is true, and to say what isn't that it is false. But of course he didn't express this view in contemporary terms. The view became more fashionable in the 20th century, and perhaps the best way to start is the view that Wittgenstein expressed in the Tractatus. So according to Wittgenstein, reality consists of all and only the positive atomic facts. And I would like to take it slowly at this point, starting with the notion of a positive fact. So the intuitive idea here is that a positive fact or a positive truth is a truth which ascribes a certain property to an object, while a negative truth is one that denies that. Now, perhaps a prima facie difficulty with this is that one may have the impression that there is no principled distinction here to be made because there is no syntactic characterization of the distinction. So if I say that a man is not blind, for example, although syntactically this is a negative truth or appears to be, well, if you look well within the concept of blind, it seems to be itself negative. So one may worry if this distinction between positive and negative facts is principled at all. So before we get into the details of the view, could you diffuse this preliminary worry?
Yeah, okay, good. So I don't think you should read a correspondence theory of truth into Aristotle. I mean, you're right about what he said. But what he said was just an instance of the generalization of the T-schema. So-and-so is true just if so-and-so. Something is true if it is indeed the case. So you could equally hear Aristotle as endorsing a deflationist view of truth. Of course, even if you're a deflationist, what makes something true is facts about the world, as we've already talked about in general. And you may be a realist about the world. So realism is quite compatible with a deflationist view of truth. The world is out there and it's got properties like Melbourne being an Australian and so on. So I don't think one should necessarily identify realism or Aristotle with a correspondence theory of truth. Correspondence theory of truth endorses things like facts. So it has a special ontology, as it were. The world is constituted not by objects like Melbourne and Australia and you and me. The world is constituted by facts. Of course, as you say, the prime example of this view is Wittgenstein in the Tractatus. And what you say about Wittgenstein's view is absolutely right. For something to be true, there's got to be a corresponding fact. Something is not true if there's no corresponding fact. Okay. One of the big problems with this kind of view is to say what correspondence is, of course, and that's discussed in the Tractatus, but I don't think we need to go into that for present purposes. If you take just some very simple examples, the sun is shining, or the sun is shining where I am in Ridgefield now. This is actually, it's a bit cloudy today. Let's just say it's daytime. Okay, so it's daytime here is true if and only if there's a fact out there nestled amongst the trees somewhere, which is the fact that it's day now. Now, lots of people have had real problems with an ontology of facts. What are these bizarre things? And so let me stress that Dialetheism is not committed to this at all. You don't have to be a correspondence theorist. But what you're raising is the question of whether a correspondence theorist or correspondence theory is inimical to Dialetheism. Because if certain contradictions are true, let's say P and not P, then there's got to be a fact that P and a fact that not P. So these are negative facts, if you like. There have to be negative facts. And the question is there anything rebarbative about negative facts? Actually, this whole distinction between positive and negative is highly problematic in the first place. It's okay in logic where you can stick a twiddle in front of something, okay? That's easy. But there are lots of things which is very hard to say whether they're positive or negative. Just take ordinary numbers. Being prime and being composite are the negations of each other. Which of those is negative? Well, you know, you can define each of those with some kind of with negation signs, or take being transparent and being opaque. Each is the negation of the other. Now, which is that real negative fact? Okay, the answer to this are not at all obvious, but I raise it just to set it aside. Let's assume that we can understand the notion of the distinction between positive and negative facts. Then, according to a correspondence theory, there do have to be negative facts, namely things which make negative propositions true. All right, so let's talk about problems that might be there. If you read the Tractatus, not P is true if P isn't true. Okay. And so if you think that there can be a fact that makes P true and a fact that makes not P true, there's got to be both a fact that P and no fact that P. Okay. That's obviously contradictory. Obviously, Dialetheism does not rule out the possibility of that. It's just another contradiction. And you can grit your teeth and bear that if you want to. But in fact, that's not the way that most semantics for Dialetheism goes. Because in most dialectic semantics, the fact that not P is not simply the absence of a fact that P, it's the fact that not P. Okay. So this is a negative fact in a kind of sui generis sense. And this is probably not the place to go into theories of negative facts, but suffice it to say here that theories of negative facts are everywhere in the theory of power-consistent logic, even in fact not in power-consistent logic. I mean, there's a whole theory of situation semantics developed by people like Etchemendy and Barwise. These guys are not power-consistent logicians, but they have a theory of what amounts to positive and negative facts. And the basic idea is very simple. Take a claim like the sun shining. Okay, that comes with polarity. Call it 1 and 0. So the sun is shining with a polarity 1 is the fact that the sun is shining. The sun is shining with polarity 0 is the fact that it's not shining. So you tease apart the different polarities, and the polarities work independently. So we know that technically the problem of negative facts is not impossible in a quite consistent way. So it's not as though it leads you into contradiction if you don't want it to.
O bolero tem cadência, para muitos sem igual, mas não tem toda a influência quando chega o carnaval, quando chega o carnaval.